Hello, my dear brothers and sisters. What a joy to have you join us. May this news program bring light to your mind and warmth to your heart. So whether you are tuning in from the heart of Utah or joining us from around the world, your favorite news program starts now, where news meets insight and the stories of our faith unfold. Close quote.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Mormon Newscast. It is Monday, March 31st. That means tomorrow is, you know what, April Fools. But we are not fooling here. This is the best newscast around. We have two of the best commentators. Bill Reel, how are you today?
I'm doing so good.
And RFM, how are you?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for asking.
Yes, and I'm back after I missed last week, if you recall, because I had freaking pneumonia. I do not know what is wrong with me.
It wasn't Ebola?
So it was not Ebola. I
knew it was one or the other. I couldn't remember which. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I do understand you announced that. So I'd like to, put aside everyone's fears. I did not have Ebola. Just a simple case of pneumonia, which I still have, but I'm forging ahead.
They kind of sound the same.
Well, what is that supposed to say? My cheeks are flushed. I have a raspy voice. Are you saying that's how I always look and sound? Yeah. Good to know. Thank you for the feedback.
Blood coming out of the eyeballs.
Exactly. Well, anyway, we're all here and we have quite a program for you tonight. Let's go to our bullet points and I'll tell you what we're going to cover. So we have a lot to cover. All right. Of course, we're going to be covering Jared Halverson, Shaken Not Stirred. And Bill's going to cover that story, and we are all going to weigh in, I think, on that. A Fairview Temple application update. I, of course, will be covering that brief little update. Former bishop charged with SA. That is going to be RFM, and he's dug into that and found some really interesting things in that story. LDS Church embraces AI with some new tools. I'm going to cover that. And then finally, what everybody's talking about, how to wear the new LDS garments. So this is going to be a great show. Let's start off with Bill right away.
All right. So let me get the sound on here. So, all right, folks, just to note something that's sort of gone on here recently, and I want to give some context to this. So I need to back up just a moment. The week prior on the Mormon Newscast, we covered this talk by Elder Renland. And if we remember in this talk that was covered, he says to the church, he says to the members of the church, he says, church leaders, quote, haven't done as good a job as I think we can to address existing imbalances within the bounds that God has set. Because he says that women can't have priesthood, but we should have been doing better at creating more equality, is what I take it, the existing imbalances. And he says, quote, so we're going to do better, unquote. And that's important context, because what happened this week is interesting, and we're going to run you through the whole ordeal. So first, we need to know who Jared Halverson is. He is the associate professor at BYU. He has a podcast called the Unshaken podcast, where he, as an apologist, and in academia, has studied a lot of the problematic issues and has spent a lot of time in with folks who have had either faith crises or doubts, questions, folks who have left the church, folks who have came back, folks who have serious questions and are considering leaving. And his effort is really to try to help people to stay or to come back. He's a believing, faithful Latter-day Saint. And on his podcast, Unshaken, we covered this Friday night on Mormonism After Dark, but he did a episode where they talked about Emma Hale, Joseph Smith's wife, one of them, and Halverson in this episode cuts out a small part of this podcast and publishes it as a short video. And so we're going to listen to that now, because this sets up the story. This made the sisters in the church, a lot of them, also a lot of women who have left the church, and folks who were sort of on the fence and considering. This got a lot of women riled up in all directions, and I think you'll see why.
Many of you know that I study faith loss and secularization and anti-religious rhetoric. You know that I'm trying to keep my finger on the pulse of people losing their faith around the world and doing whatever I can to try to resuscitate that faith. Well, as I've been studying books about this and reading articles and watching graphs and statistics, some of those statistics are pretty unsettling. To watch the rise of the nuns, as they call it, Nones. No, this is not people flocking to the Catholic convent. None as in no religious affiliation. I'm a part of none. And that's been on the rise since about the 1990s. It's peaking in ways that we haven't quite seen before. Well, one of the statistics that has worried me most of late comes from a survey that was done in 2023. And it's suggesting that for the first time that I can think of, more women are leaving religion than men are. That's shocking to me as a historian of religion in America. Because there was actually a great article I read in grad school called Religious History is Women's History. That women have always outnumbered men, not at the pulpit, but in the pew. And so often it's these sister saints organizing benevolent societies. Ours is called the Relief Society, doing incredible things. So much heavy lifting in the kingdom of God is done by God's daughters. I read a book once on the history of secularization in Great Britain in the 20th century. And one of the author's main points was religion seemed to collapse in Great Britain when women stopped coming to church. Men were a mixed bag, sometimes strong, sometimes weak, sometimes coming, sometimes leaving. But women seemed to hold steady, and they held the church up until they stopped doing that. And there wasn't much left to keep it afloat. Sister saints, be aware of just how important you are in the kingdom of God. Each of you daughters of God, each of you elect ladies. And then prepare yourself for this caution in section 25, verse 10. Yes, it applies to men just as much, but I want you sisters to hear it with feminine ears. 25:10, to Emma Smith, verily I say unto thee that thou shalt lay aside the things of this world and seek for the things of a better world. In some ways, I'm asking you to sacrifice, lay aside the things of this world. But in another way, I'm not asking for a sacrifice at all. It's not a sacrifice when you get more than you give. That's called an investment. And so invest in a better world by saving your stock and not putting it into this world. Those are all declining returns. You want an amazing return on investment? Then lay up treasures in heaven where moth and rust doth not corrupt.
And what ensued from that was a firestorm. Immediately, the comments on this video by far outnumbered the comments on the other clips that he had shared. Not only were there tons of great comments, we won't go through them, although I will put them up on the screen if folks want to pause the newscast and read each of them. You're welcome to. I think that they are articulated phenomenally. And as I went through these comments, I only went through maybe the first 10% of them, and I gathered all of these sort of from the beginning. I didn't get the ones towards the middle or the end, but there were hundreds of comments and lots of likes on each one too. Sometimes hundreds and hundreds of likes on a comment as well. This caused a firestorm, and so I'll just note here. There's that one. Here's a few more, and RFM and I. As well as Rebecca and everybody else in the content creation, but RFM and I, for our show, Mormonism After Dark, decided to cover this video. And we reached out to Dr. Julie Hanks and Brittany Hartley and had the two of them on to speak about this issue. And I think throughout the entire episode, they lay out so many good comments. I'd highly suggest folks go back and watch it. But I wanted to play a few of them here for you. And I think you'll get the gist if you sort of come to this conversation and you just listen to Jared and you can't quite figure out what it was that was wrong with what he said. I hope that you'll take seriously what Dr. Julie Hanks and Brittany Hartley have to say.
Hey, Bill, I was just going to add that if I had had my druthers, there would have been 3 women on the show, because the first person I reached out to was actually Rebecca.
Yeah.
It's true, but I had pneumonia and I could only make a squeak. So
As opposed to Ebola. But
Yeah,
she
as
couldn't make
opposed
it
to
no matter what
Ebola.
it was she had.
That's right. No, Julie and Britt were absolutely incredible. And I watched every minute of it and kind of squeaked, yes, you go, girl. They're awesome.
So
They did a
here's
fantastic job.
Yeah. Here's the comment by Britt Hartley. We'll play one by Dr. Julie Hanks where she reads the comment that you just saw on the screen a moment ago. And then I've got one last one from Britt Hartley before we move on from what was said here. So here's Britt.
It's fascinating to me, and I made a TikTok about this. The most like delicious part of this for me is that he used as his example to call women back to self-sacrifice, which is really what he's doing. Hey, like we need your self-sacrifice here, or we can't have church. The person that he uses to call us back to that is Emma. And to me, the delicious thing about this is that when Emma sees Brigham Young take over, Brigham Young being the asshole that he is, she wants nothing to do with this. She doesn't go with the Saints West. She marries a never Mormon after this on Joseph's birthday of all things. And so the person that he is using to call us back to self-sacrifice is a woman who said enough and didn't go with the Saints West and married someone who was never Mormon. That's your example. And so like, just, that was so ironic to me. And that was so, I don't know, like just like the blindness of it was so shocking to me. And again, women are saying, and he never mentioned it, he just said, women just stop doing that as if it's like some mystery. And it's like the only thing that you're offering us is self-sacrifice. And so women are going to other places where their spiritual gifts can be explored, where their spiritual cups can be filled. And this is like some great mystery to him. And so he's going to use Emma, who left in order to try to call us back to the self-sacrifice that they need in order for churches to run, because churches cannot function without the invisible labor of women.
Do you guys want to say anything about Halverson's original video and Britt's comment, which will give me a second to queue up Dr. Julie Hanks?
Yeah, I'd like to mention once I could talk again, I made a short about it because I thought it was so interesting. He talks about studying books, graphs, chapters, charts. You know, he didn't study them very well because here on the Mormon Newscast, we podcasted over and over about this trend of women stepping away because of social issues and patriarchy and just, you know, general treatment. And, you know, they're not stepping away, leaving religion altogether. As Britt said, they're finding other ways to exercise their spirituality where they're in control and, you know, they're appreciated. So the short I made mentioned, you know, Jared, if you're going to read all these graphs and charts and books, what if you actually talked to a real woman, a person who is either in the church or someone who feels disenfranchised, someone who stepped away from the church? What if instead of all your charts and graphs and books, you talk to a real person? I don't know if he saw my short, but I understand that he is now going to maybe actually talk to some real women and find out what some of the actual issues may be. So I think that's interesting.
I agree, 100%. You have that queued up there, Bill? I feel like I've been talking about this all weekend, though I know not all of it publicly. I've been talking about it so much behind the scenes because this is a big deal. And were you going to play when Michelle calls in?
No, I don't have the phone call.
Okay, then I just want to make sure I wasn't anticipating something you already have lined up. It was I think it was the first caller, and I believe the name was Michelle. But she had made this incredible point that she would at least begrudgingly give Jared Halverson credit for the fact that he's not lying. And he's not doing the gaslighting that we hear so often in the church regarding these and other issues. He's actually saying the quiet part out loud. And it was astonishing. And that's what got everybody so riled up. You know, it's like we all kind of know what the game is, but to have somebody come out and actually say it, then we get upset. But he got a lot of people upset. And what she said was, look, at least give him credit for telling the truth.
So here's Dr. Julie Hanks and what she had to add to this. I think her comment is, again, well articulated. So here's that.
Maybe churches need to reflect on what they are doing or not doing to push women out of the church. Women aren't the problem. Women are tired of associating with organizations that don't listen to their voices, that don't give them authority and don't offer privileges that they offer men. Church is the only place in my life where I am told I can't do certain things because I'm a woman. I am prevented from holding certain leadership positions because I'm a woman. I am prevented from blessing others' lives through performing ordinances because I'm a woman. I don't see my gender reflected in the leadership of the church or in general conference talks. Women are leaving religion because it's so steeped in patriarchy. Women aren't leaving churches for worldly things. Women are leaving because we are no longer tolerating sexism and systems that limit opportunities to serve. Churches are the only place left in my world where women are denied opportunities because of gender. That's why women are leaving. It's not a mysterious phenomenon.
Bada boom. Incredibly well put. And that's why I believe as of that time, her comment was at the very top of all the other comments because it had so many likes.
Yeah, by the way, this reminds me of a moment. If you guys remember Gordon B. Hinckley, president of the church at the time, back in, I'm going to say the mid 90s or so. And he's doing an interview and he's asked about women. Why don't women hold the priesthood? And Hinckley's answer is they're not asking for it. Something along that line.
Right.
I'm telling you, it seems like what Elder Renlund's pointing at, the uproar that happened with Jared Halverson, it seems like we are in a moment where even the believing women of the church are saying, figure this out, or we'll just exit the door and get out of here.
Bill, can I tell you something? I'm not advocating for anything, okay? I'm just making an observation, which is political in nature and I think true. So let me say it and you can do with it what you will. Jared Halverson has signaled the weak spot that the church has, which is that they need the women there. They need someone to rule over, right? You can't just have a kingdom with kings. You have to have some peasants in there to make it fun. So come back, peasants, come back. No, this is the time. This is the time when I think if women want the priesthood, it is theirs for the taking. And that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Although, doesn't that remind you of just about, I think it was a year, 6 months ago, Women on the Stand, there was a scheduled walkout, a Sunday where women would not attend to draw attention to the heavy lifting that they do behind the scenes. And it never really happened or got off the ground. Women did not stay home. They went to church. They fulfilled their callings. So something bigger needs to happen. And maybe this is sort of a wake-up call, I think.
It couldn't be more obvious to me. It's like the writing is on the wall, courtesy of Jared Halverson.
Yeah. What would happen if 50% of the population that is undervalued, if they collectively decided that, fine, we're going to step away? And I think you both are hitting on it. A drastic thing. The church would receive revelation fast and furious because there is no church without those women.
Although not on paper, because if you also remember within the last year, there were guidelines or parameters on how to run a ward, what it takes, what offices, what callings it takes to run a ward. There were no women mentioned. Of course, they had bishop, counselors, secretary, all of that. And that was to kind of streamline shrinking wards. There were no women mentioned, as if the ward could function. And maybe on paper it could. Maybe ecclesiastically it could. But it can't in reality.
I think that's why we call you auxiliaries.
That's it.
All right, so this is the final clip from the Mormonism After Dark episode. And as you pointed out, RFM, the callers for that show were phenomenal. If for nothing else, go back and listen to Julie, listen to Britt. Everything they have to say is gold. But stay till the end because there are, I think, 3 callers who call in, and each of them has something, I think, really important to say. As you pointed out, I think Michelle was the first one, and her call was just above and beyond, sort of hitting the nail on the head.
What was amazing is that either we got really, really lucky and we had 5 people who called or were on who were all incredibly eloquent people. And I know some of them are. But I think that there was a spirit that caught fire in that episode that was lit by Julie and Britt. And then it caught on to other people who were able to summon that kind of eloquence. Maybe those people are as eloquent as that all the time, but I was stunned that not only one, then the next one, and then the next one were so eloquent for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
And passionate and powerful in making their points.
Yeah. And that show normally gets, the Mormonism After Dark normally gets 5,000 to 6,000 views. And it today is over 14,000. So there are a lot of folks who don't normally watch that show who had it pointed to them or noticed the subject matter and sought it out. And that speaks a lot when you have an episode that draws a lot of attention. For instance, Kate, about a month ago on Mormonism Live, over 50,000. And I think when people are speaking to certain things and they really hit the nail on the head and speak the truth to it, those episodes tend to catch sort of fire. And I think Britt's last comment here is no different. This might have been my favorite comment of hers for the night.
It almost feels to me the same, it feels in my body the same way it did when I was called a lazy learner for leaving the church, when I'm the least laziest learner that I know. So to be called worldly or less than, or that I'm not sacrificing enough just because I found another place where my spirituality is thriving, where my cup is filled, where my voice is valued, where my gifts are valued, to just have someone look at that and call that worldly and not good enough. There's just something like just deeply painful about that. And it feels just like when I was kind of called a lazy learner, when I was doing so much, when I felt like I was pouring myself into learning. It just feels like such a mischaracterization that it's hard not to like have an emotional response to that as a woman. Like, we did give everything. We wanted to stay. It was our whole life. We poured our lives into it. We got up on Sundays. We made the toddler bags. We had the sign-up sheets. Like, we poured our lives into this. So then call us worldly when we find spirituality outside of Mormonism that actually fills our cups. And we're just talking about even getting back to like the base, like we don't even have the rights as Mormon women of what Mormon women had in the early church. Like, we don't even have the same rights that we had 200 years ago. Like, just our ability to have our own budgets and our own curriculum and be able to heal each other and tend to each other. We don't even have like what they had 200 years ago.
And what that did is when that show was over, Jared Halverson reached out to Brittany Hartley and Dr. Julie Hanks. He watched the show and he reached out to the two of them to offer to extend an opportunity for him to hear them, for them to share with him what their experience is, so that maybe he could figure out what it was he was sort of missing or what his blind spot was. Is there anything that you want to say, RFM or Rebecca, about any of this up to that point?
No, just that it was quite remarkable and well received by both Julie and Britt. That I think it was by early the next morning on Saturday, this past Saturday, that he had reached out and wanted to speak independently, I think, with each of them.
I just have to say that's interesting, given that I'm sure he's been in contact with other women throughout his life in the church. Daughters, spouses, students, women that he interacts with in his ward, and never in his interaction with all of these people did he have an inkling that what he was saying might ignite what it did. But now that he understands, or is starting to understand, that there's something wrong with what he said, now he's willing to make a concerted effort with two women that he saw being vocal and talk to them. It's just, I honestly think it's not his fault. I think you can spend your life around women in the church and be completely blind to their situation and what's really happening for women and their lives in the church.
Okay, but from my point of view, This was so bad. What he did is so bad. By the way, do you know if it's still up?
The original
The
video?
original? Yes.
I
the
think so.
original.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is so bad that it could be mistaken for satire under Poe's law. If you were to watch this and not know who he is and just be watching this, you could be saying that is so overstated. It's like slapstick. This is extreme sarcasm and satire. He is making fun of the position that he's pretending to advocate by overplaying it and saying all these ridiculous things and then saying, hey, we know that you've all been in the pews and not up here in the leadership, but hey, somebody's got to do the work. And I guess that's you. And we need you back. I mean, it's the stuff of Saturday Night Live. So I'm just saying that it was really bad.
I think we're all aware that in this space of creating content about the problems in Mormonism, that you sort of notice that there could be people, let me say it differently. There very well could be people who accomplish their mission of trying to expose the problems of the church by overplaying the believing card, by doing exactly what Halvorsen does here, where he says he's a believing Mormon, and he is, by the way. I don't think he's playing the game, but that he says he's a believing Mormon, and as you point out, he just overplays the problem in order to sort of draw attention to it. Everyone's pointing out that something here doesn't add up, and then sit back and watch how this just all unfolds and explodes. He does it, though, being serious, as you point out as well. Okay, so now we get to this moment where Jared Halverson.
I'm sorry if it wasn't clear, Bill and Rebecca. The reason I was bringing that up wasn't to try and gratuitously slam Jared Halverson. It was to say that this wasn't some kind of inadvertent misstep, along the way of just trying to express something. It's not some people getting offended for really, it's not that big a thing, and he didn't mean any harm, so what's the big deal? This was methodical. This was the whole message. It was a masterpiece in offensiveness. And I tend to try and not get offended too much, I mean, it doesn't pay, right? But my gosh, I could see that one coming a mile away. Even as I'm watching it the first time. Somebody had sent it to me. I think it might have been you. It might have been Martine. I think it's okay to say that. If it isn't, sorry, it's live, Martine. So, but she'd sent this to me, right? And I'm watching it and I'm going, so what's the big deal? Because we get in there, 2/3 of the way through, and I'm thinking, oh, hey, wait, he's seeing that women as a percentage in the church membership is declining now over time. And I remember that Bill had used the same charts and made the same point in an earlier version of the newscast, right? So I thought, okay, that's moderately interesting. But then all of a sudden, he starts talking about the women and having the women in the pews instead of up here in the pulpit. And it just went downhill from there. I mean, it didn't just go downhill. It was a cliff into an abyss, and he kept falling and falling and falling. It was just incredible. So,
yeah.
What I'm saying is, if a guy is educated and as apparently intelligent as Jared Halverson is, he's articulate, well-read. I'm sure he's read a few books, as Jared Halverson is. But for him to orchestrate this absolute, almost satirical production about women in the priesthood and not be aware of it, that's amazing to me.
But I think he's saying nothing that he has not heard before, or just the pervasive attitude. It's no different. It's just a fact to him. It's known to him. He's probably stunned at the backlash over it.
And then the question becomes, of course, how many times has he said this exact lesson before when he's at the same part of, the 4 years? Doctrine and Covenants, section 25 to Emma, right? This is before section 132 when she's threatened with destruction. Now she's just threatened with putting together a church hymnal or something in section 25. And he uses that, right? So I doubt that this is the first time he's used that. He's a CES man from Institute and from Nashville and all sorts of things, got promoted to being a professor at BYU. He's an associate professor technically, but still, I would imagine it's likely he's said this on a few occasions prior to this.
And something struck a chord with him in the response that happened, both in the comments of his video, as well as in the video that that you and I did Friday by having Britt and Dr. Julie Hanks on, Britt Hartley and Julie Hanks. And what followed then was that Halvorsen issued an apology. Here's that.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jared Halverson. Some of you may have gotten to know me for the first time recently, and I just wanted to let you all know that I am losing sleep over pain that I'm causing, and I just want to apologize for hitting a nerve that I had actually hoped to calm. When I say I'm losing sleep, that's literal. There's my clock. It's a little after 2 a.m, and the last 4 hours or so, I've been reading your comments, watching a longer video from some people that are just hoping I can learn some things, and I am eager to learn as much as I can. That's always been the case. I just want to help, and I had hoped to help, to support my sister saints, to build you up, and that did not come across. I so wish that there weren't a connection between I don't even know how to say it. I'll keep thinking, I'll keep wrestling. I'm just grateful for the love of God for all of his children. And it's something I feel keenly. I want everyone to be able to feel that wherever their pain might be. I do try to meet with people one-on-one as often as I can. I've tried to respond to many of you in the comments on Instagram, and the sisters who were on the video recently, I reached out to both of them tonight as well, just seeing if there's a way we could meet, and so I can learn more from their experience in the church and leaving the church and out of the church. I do try to do that as often as I can. It's one thing that's been a blessing to me through this explosion is there's just so much pain out there, and it's giving me a chance to put my finger on the pulse of so many sisters in and out of the church that aren't feeling heard. I want to know you. I wish we knew each other. I wish I had the time to go and have lunch with every one of you to hear the experiences you've had, good, bad, and ugly, and how we can make things better. I've always loved something that Bill Gates once said from a business perspective, that your best source of information are your unhappy customers. I meet unhappy customers of the church all the time, and they are an incredible source of information that I hope I'm using to make my classes a more welcoming place, make my office a place where healing can occur as we just mourn with those that mourn and wrestle with difficult things. I am a firm believer in the power of validation and of empathy. I try to prove contraries in every conversation I ever have. And so this morning, when I woke up, still reeling from the firestorm, I prayed, as I often do, for thick skin and a soft heart, which is a hard combination. It's a contrary of its own, but one that I'm praying to develop. I'm sorry for pain that I've caused. Grateful for the atonement of Jesus Christ that can heal us all, and grateful for your perspectives that you are teaching me. And so please continue to do so. I do believe in a Zion on the horizon where we are one heart and one mind dwelling together in righteousness with no poor, whether that's poor in spirit, poor in the feelings that they are being given about their worth. I just want to express my love to each of you and my love for the Lord, who keeps me going through all of these things, and pray that he'll keep you going through things as well. Thank you for just giving me the chance to talk to you And I pray that this doesn't cause additional pain, but gives you a little piece of a heart that is broken in me for unintended pain that I may be causing. I feel strongly about the Hippocratic oath when it comes to what I'm trying to do, which is cause no pain. And I just want to support and understand and love and teach as the Savior would. And I'm a far cry from him, but I'm working on it. Thank you.
What do you want to say about the apology? This is fresh. Everything else we've gone through.
I was ready to hit scene, like, half an hour into that apology. It's just like, stop already. Okay, just stop. He kept going and going, which may be an indication that he felt that he had not said everything as much as he wanted to say. And I'm not sure that he ever got to it, because there really weren't a lot of specifics. In other words, it would be helpful if he gave an example of something that he had learned from watching Julie, Hanks, and Britt on the show. Britt Hartley, right? Just something, anything. There were at least 3 times. By the way, my tongue is still sore from biting it during Friday night show. I was fighting with myself, because you know how much I want to be a part of the discussion, okay? And how prone I am to interrupting. But so I kept myself like Houdini in a straitjacket of sorts. But every now and then I would slip out to say something, right? But I wanted to be out of the way, because what they were doing was absolutely phenomenal to watch them. And there were at least 3 instances, to get to the point I was driving toward, where I didn't say anything about it because I didn't want to interrupt what was going on. But there were at least 3 times when it was either Julie or Britt or a caller had said something that all of a sudden I got an insight into the situation from a woman's point of view that I would not have had otherwise. It never would have come into my mind, because I can't see it from a woman's point of view. And sometimes I need some help. And I found that as I listened, even though I had to bite my tongue to do so, I learned some stuff. So I would just hope that Jared Halverson might have learned one thing that he could have, shown that he actually had learned one thing. By the way, one other thing, everybody. This is just a point of order, okay? And if I were there with Jared, if he had asked me for some help in making this video, this is what I would have told him, okay? Knock off the crap about you're losing sleep. Knock off the crap about it's 2:22 in the morning, okay? Knock off the crap about how you're the victim here. This is not the look you want to portray. I have stood beside hundreds of people being sentenced for crimes when the judge is going to impose a sentence after they have their right to say what it is that they want to say. Right? You have the right to talk to the judge before you get sentenced. I think it's called the right of allocution or something like that. But we always have a discussion before that happens. And the thing is, when you're in front of a judge and you're going to get sentenced for something you did, you don't want to try and make yourself sound like you're the victim, and that the other person or somebody else was the aggressor, right? And you can also do that by blaming someone other than yourself. So there are different ways to get this message across. But the reason you don't do that, and the reason I have that meeting with them before every sentencing hearing, is because I don't want them to do that inadvertently, because this is the worst time to get the judge mad at you. And the judge is going to get mad at you if you, having pleaded guilty or been found guilty of a crime, standing in front of the judge, are now trying to say, I didn't do it. Okay? And it's somebody else's fault. It naturally generates some degree of wrath in a reasonable human being and judges. So that's why I would have told him, lose all of this stuff, which makes it look like, and I don't know what's in your mind, but let me tell you the way it's going to play on TV. Get rid of all the stuff that makes it look like you are the victim. Just a suggestion.
But I kind of think that's almost the point of this. He calls it an apology. I'll call it a response. I think he was so shocked by the response that he wanted to humanize himself in front of everyone by saying, I'm wounded. I am so feeling horrible that what I said caused this response. I'm losing sleep. I'm thankful for the atonement. I want everyone to be okay. I'm thankful for God's love. There was an awful lot of I'm that we heard, and I understand what he was trying to say, but the very glaring thing he never said is, we're going to fix this. We're going to fix this. I've learned something, and we're going to do something about this. And I think the reason he didn't say that is because he can't say that. I don't think anyone can say this at this point. I made another short today. One of his famous quotes from his original was, women outnumber men in the church, not at the pulpit, right? But at the pew. That's one of the things that really struck a chord. And I thought, what's coming up this weekend? Well, it's General Conference. And if you want to see what that means, women in the pews, not at the pulpit, I just invite you to take note. Again, year after year, where the women are. They're not at the pulpit. They're not able to speak. They're in the pews. So he was right on that one. But, there has to be some kind of change, and he's not going to be the one to make it. I think he now maybe will try to learn from these unnamed women, right? He said he heard the opinions of some women. Maybe he'll try to learn something, change a perspective, but it's baked in, I feel. And there needs to be another kind of change.
There are people who have contacted me and said, no, it's no big deal. By the way, he's not going to come on our show. I'll get to that story here in a bit, though, Bill, when you ask me to. But the thing about this is that people have commented to me personally, if he's going to meet with Julie, he's going to meet with Britt, so what? This is just a performance. This is just, the song and dance to move it on down the road until nobody cares about it. And then you go back to business as usual. And I said, yeah, I know what you're saying. And 9 times out of 10 in a situation like this, I would agree with you. I think that you're right. But what if this is the 1 out of 10? And what if we're not expecting a complete 180-degree shift in his views on this subject, but maybe just 3 degrees shift? And is that worth taking the time to talk with a person who is reaching out after being called out somewhat, justifiably so, but certainly, we didn't really spare him too much on Friday night. So it takes a certain strength of character to do that. And I think that should be noted. I do wish that he would come on this show. I did reach out to him. There was a listener to the show who messaged me and said, if you want the number for Jared Halverson, I can get it for you. And I said, well, I tell you what, only if you feel comfortable, for crying out loud. And then he says, well, I Googled it, so it's pretty easy to find. So here it is. So I used it and I texted Jared Halverson yesterday afternoon, and he texted me back. I invited him to come on the show. And ultimately, he declined. He was very polite, very nice. Ended up declining, but we went back and forth several times. We've talked about, some different things. And I also told him after his initial declining it that, what was it? That my vision for the show is to have him back on and have Julie and Britt back on. And then Bill and I sit back and watch them talk it out as a general idea. And he thought that was intriguing because honestly, this is great publicity. This is great publicity. This is giving him a platform to do something that would help. Okay. It would help him in the situation that he's in to come and meet with these people, not privately, where nobody can see it. There's a PR aspect to this too, but publicly, and then talk with them about it. That would go so much further to rehabilitating his character, I think, than doing it privately, though privately is better than not at all. So that's what I'm saying. Now, I don't know if this is his own decision or Ultimately, it's his own decision, obviously. But he is a professor, an associate professor of ancient scripture at BYU. So he works for the church. So I don't know. That may that could play into it as well. In other words, he could not come on this show without getting the church's permission. And I'm sure that he would be asking the church first, or whatever representative of the church in the BYU structure hierarchy that person is, right? So he wouldn't come on without the church's okay, because his job could be in jeopardy. And he would be foolish not to ask in the first place, right? So I don't know if it's him or if it's because of just BYU says no dice, you can't go anywhere near a platform like Mormonism Live. But it just doesn't look like it's going to happen. But he did invite me out to lunch, maybe during Sunstone at the end of July. And he says it'll be his treat. He mentioned you too, Bill, that you could come. He didn't mention you, Rebecca, but I think I could get you in.
You could squeeze me in. He's probably never heard of me.
In the church, we all get this. In the church, you can't say all the things you would like to say. There's no doubt in my mind that Jared knows enough of the messiness of Mormonism to know that some things don't have the best of answers. And in this space, if you're on the believing side, the faithful side, you want to stay in the church's good graces, there's only so far you can go. Going too far risks lots of things, not just your employment, but your membership in the church even. But I do find it interesting. Again, kudos to the apology. I'll say something here about that in a moment, but kudos to the apology. But it's a glaring, it's sometimes the silence is deafening. And the fact that he says I watched a show, doesn't name it. I heard some people, doesn't name Julie or Britt. Mentions getting comments, but doesn't name who those are. Doesn't point the people who are watching this apology that are on his side of things that wouldn't even know where this is going on. He doesn't help any of them to put two and two together to get context for all of this. So he apologizes for hurt that's been caused. But he intentionally or unintentionally fails to inform his audience of how they can understand exactly what it is that he's apologizing for. And he tells all the women he's hurt that he's sorry for the pain, but he fails to tell them what lesson it is he learned. Like, what is it that made you sense that you hurt someone besides the fact that people are expressing pain? Do you not get the ideas that are going on? And to prove my point, let me take this off, put this up. Word Radio puts out an episode, Jared Halverson did nothing wrong except apologize. And what I'm suggesting is that Brother Halverson, folks on the believing side, will continue to sort of take this stance until you set the record by explaining what it is that struck you as being contrary to what you said in your original video. Your guys' thoughts on this Ward Radio episode, Jared Halverson did nothing wrong except apologize.
I think this is very interesting. I started to watch a little of it, but I did go through a lot of the comments, as I know RFM did too. And a lot of the comments say things like, don't cave, Jared. You're bowing to social pressure, Jared. You said nothing wrong, Jared, which is, one of those perspectives.
Yeah, I would say that just giving passing notice to, once again, the alt-right language that they insert in some of their titles, where they have did nothing wrong, harking back to Elder Holland, did nothing wrong, harking back to Hitler, of course, did nothing wrong, be the origin of that. This is significant. Now, what they do is this, okay? Whereas you and I'd say all three of us, probably most people watching, when we looked at the original video that came out from Jared Halverson and the second one, the apology video, we didn't like the first video, and the second one, well, okay, that was better than the first one. We might disagree on how much better it was, but I think everybody would say, well, it was better than the first one to some degree. These guys, okay, these guys have the opposite point of view. They think the first video was gung-ho, A1, top of the list. But the apology video, that was horrible. That was stink. Oh my gosh. He never should have apologized because he never said anything wrong. So that's why I have Jared Halverson did nothing wrong except apologize. Now, I just want to say something. There's a ton of people, ton of likes over here for these guys. And this particular podcast is important for one reason, at least. And that one reason is this, is that it demonstrates that Jared Halverson and the message he gave and the way he gave it is not something that just one person is saying over here in a corner who happens to be a Mormon, who's a professor at BYU. This is believed and championed and cheered by a large segment of active LDS male membership. And that's what that podcast shows to me.
Anything else from you, Rebecca? Otherwise, we're almost at an hour and the story is taking up all the time. I don't think I could have covered any less of this.
It is an important story.
It's very important. Yeah.
So let me say one last thing, and then I'll get your guys' final thoughts on the story, and then we can move on. So before I share I've got it up on the screen. I want it to be clear what I said. So before I share my thoughts, I want to take a moment to thank Jared Halverson for apologizing. It's no small thing to publicly acknowledge that you caused harm, especially in a faith context that so often avoids direct accountability. He went further than institutional Mormonism typically does, and that deserves recognition. He spoke up. He admitted there was pain, and that's a meaningful first step. Now, here's why that step, while appreciated, still leaves important work undone. When Jared Halverson published his short video encouraging women to stay in the church, he may have intended it as a faith-promoting message, but instead he ended up exposing a glaring blind spot, one that many women immediately recognized as spiritual harm cloaked in benevolent patriarchy. To his credit, Jared issued an apology. A great first step. He seemed acutely aware that he had hurt people and not just a few. The response from women was overwhelming. But while he acknowledged the existence of pain, such didn't demonstrate that he truly understands what he did to cause that pain. More troubling was his unwillingness to name the source that helped him to begin to see it, namely the podcast and the articulate responses from Britt Hartley and Dr. Julie Hanks. Instead, he vaguely referenced a show without telling his audience where to hear those women's voices for themselves. This omission may seem minor, but in a faith that whitewashes and embellishes its history, withholds the full story, issues carefully worded responses, and refrains from accountability, Jared's apology can easily be seen as him wanting to protect his followers from the very perspectives he claims to be learning from. And that's not entirely his fault. The LDS Church tends to reward those who name its blind spot. The LDS Church doesn't tend to reward those who name its blind spots too directly. It's a culture that encourages soft landings and ambiguous language over sharp clarity and public reckoning. So it's understandable, though still regrettable, that Jared might hesitate to fully amplify the voices of the very women whose insights helped him begin to see. And that's a problem, especially when Jared's original video was meant to influence women to shape their spiritual decisions, to call them back. If you're going to speak to women with the goal of affecting change, you have a moral responsibility to also point your audience toward the voices of the women who pushed back and explained why your message was harmful. That's how real learning spreads. That's how patriarchal systems start to unravel, when those within them are willing to sit in discomfort and invite others to do the same. People are watching, Jared. And when someone with your platform gets it wrong and then stops short of truly engaging with the correction, it reinforces the very dynamics that drive women away in the first place. Jared, if you see the harm, not just as unfortunate fallout, but as the predictable fruit of patriarchy, then can you join with everyone listening right now? When will the faithful stop hedging and say out loud this institution does real, tangible harm? When will the defender stop worrying about how the institution will react and focus on the victims its abuse worried more? I'm sorry, it's abuse. I must have missed a word there, but worried more about membership than choosing the right and letting the consequence follow. When will those inside the church who grasp the harm develop the courage to amplify the voices of those that the patriarchy is silencing? Name the problem, challenge the system, and stand unapologetically with the women who are calling it out. Anything less isn't courage. It's choreography, a carefully curated performance that keeps you in good standing while sidestepping the messy work of real accountability. And with that, I've covered everything I want to say about this news story, but I do want to get any last words from you before we move on with the show.
Okay, well, I wanted just to put this up here on the screen, if I can, add this to the stage. Doesn't seem to be working.
Try it again.
Hey, thank you so much. Yeah, I wasn't making that up. You can go Wikipedia. Just look up Hitler was right or Hitler did nothing wrong, which is what I did. Hitler was right. Hitler was right and or Hitler did nothing wrong are statements and internet memes, either expressing support for Nazi dictator Adolf Hitler or trolling, which I think is what's going on here. The ironic or trolling uses of the phrase often allow those on the alt-right to maintain plausible deniability over their white supremacist, Nazi, or other far-right views. So I'm just reading from an article on Wikipedia and not rendering any judgments myself. Okay.
And there it is. I will say, I wonder if he'll come out with a response to the apology. Perhaps he will. And if that's the case, we will cover it again on the Mormon Newscast.
He needs to come on the show.
I wish he would. I think that
or
would be
Wednesday, you know, it could be Wednesday. We would move what we have scheduled for Wednesday to accommodate him. That's because we don't have a guest who's scheduled for this Wednesday. But, you know, if he did, we would drop that. We'd have him on. But the problem is that I also want to be able to have Julie and Britt on as well as Jared. I mean, that would be, I think, the whole point of it. So it can't be done that quickly. Anyway, so that's what's going on here. And are we set, Rebecca? I know you're in charge. I don't know. Are you signaling me to go to the next story?
I think we better do it. Yeah, but that would be an epic conversation to have Jared and Britt and Julie all on together. I think everybody could learn a lot from that.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
I knew it would happen.
Okay.
Maybe
so
Sunday.
let's see here. If we got the slides.
Yep. I think the next thing up is my temple update.
I'm sorry.
Update somewhere. There it is. There we go. All right. So since our last newscast that I was on, anyway, there has been a development in the Fairview scenario with the McKinney, Texas Temple. And that is the church has finally submitted its application. Now, if you all remember, it was supposed to submit it on January 13th. That means give an official application to the town so that they can start the democratic process of putting it through planning and zoning and then town council for a vote. But they missed it. They did not submit it. And instead, they gave the town an intent to sue letter. And then there was a little back and forth. The mayor actually went on a couple different podcasts, Mormonish, and the mayor also went on Mormon book reviews to be in front of a more faithful audience. I don't know if that had any kind of impact, but the mayor said over and over, I never said that we weren't going to vote for it. We said we were going to vote for it, you know, so he said that several times on all these podcasts, looking straight at the camera. Also a lot of coverage in the Dallas Morning News.
But was that other stuff he said in addition to that?
Yes, it was the other stuff that perhaps might have been misunderstood. Regardless of what happened,
like
suddenly,
those lying, cheating sons of bitches?
I don't know if those were exactly the words. It possibly implied.
It's what he was thinking.
The bottom, well, wouldn't you be? Come on. The bottom line is that the church finally submitted its application with an actual rendering of what the smaller size temple would be. And you can see that here on the screen. It actually looks a lot like the original McKinney, Texas Temple, but it is a smaller size. The original was 44,000 square feet, 173 feet tall, and it had walls as high as 65 feet. This shorter one is 120 feet up to the tip of the spire. It's only 33,000 square feet, and the walls are only like a 42, 35 kind of a type wall. So it says, as far as what the church put out, a rendering of a compromised version of the McKinney, Texas temple. I take issue with that word compromised. They are the applicant. They need to put forward a plan that the town can vote for. So I don't know if compromise is the right word. It's 120 feet tall, nearly 30,000 square feet. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints submitted plans for this compromised version, again, compromised, of the temple to the town of Fairview on Tuesday, March 25th. And this is very funny. In parentheses, it says Church of Jesus Christ of Latter, close parentheses. They've since corrected that, but I just think that's really funny. Nobody can ever get the name right, can they? It's very interesting.
Too long.
Yeah, it's too long. It really is. So what's interesting and what I didn't pick up right away, of course, I posted, look, here's the new, application. This will now go through the process. They also put out a statement on the church's temple website about the progress of temples. And it says, McKinney, Texas Temple, latest news and media, background information, temple land use process in Fairview, Texas. And this is the church statement regarding the filing of the mediated application on March 25th. Again, I need to state, this is exactly what they talked about in mediation in November. The rules for the mediation, non-binding, were that the town would vote for it behind closed doors unanimously. They did, the town council, and then they would have an open meeting so that citizens could express their feelings about the temple. They did this. The church did not attend. Some lawyers sat there and took notes. The next step was for the church to submit this application. They did not do it in January 13th. They did it on March 25th. So their statement says, in building sacred temples, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints always seeks to cooperate with communities while exercising its fundamental rights of worship. After the town of Fairview rejected the church's first application, the church and the town reached a mediated agreement for a smaller temple. This is true. It happened in November. The town council unanimously endorsed the agreement. This is true. They did that. But the mayor later called for more concessions. This is where I say this is not accurate. What the mayor said is, y'all, you can see what the town people think. They are not on board. It still does not meet our zoning codes. You might want to think about revising it further so that it can go through the democratic process of the planning and zoning. I can't say that it would necessarily make it through that meeting with an affirmative vote, because you can see that the people in the town are saying, no, this is not exactly what we want. It does not what we want, but it does not meet our codes. So again, they're just trying to use these words saying that the town backed out, it did not. Recently, the mayor has again expressed his support and belief that the town council will stand by its word. The church is grateful for this assurance and today has filed a new application consistent with the agreement. We look forward to continuing our association with the community and as good neighbors and friends. They always want to be good neighbors. So this is the statement that they put out, again, kind of misleading, making you think, oh, the town did something wrong. Regardless, here is this application. The other thing that's going on in McKinney just this last weekend and 2 weeks prior are religious freedom workshops, especially targeted at the young people, at the teenagers, because they clearly say, because of the situation with the McKinney Temple, we want to teach everybody what their religious rights are. So I will mention something very interesting that I don't think has been mentioned before. Because the application was submitted on March 25th, that means they cannot go before the planning and zoning in April. There's not enough time. You have to have 30 days prior for all the due diligence to happen. So they'll be going before the planning and zoning on March 8th. And I want to draw everybody's attention to this, that we are going to cover
Is that May 8th, Rebecca?
Sorry, May 8th. Yes, May 8th. They can't make it in April, so they're going to make it in May. On May 8th, we're going to cover this live on the newscast. It's going to be the Fairview Planning and Zoning Committee meeting. We've done this before. Get your popcorn. And this is where the LDS Church's application for the revised temple plan will be voted on. Now, what's very interesting is that I don't know if people realize this, but there's a turnover in the town council. So by the time this passes, goes through planning and zoning, regardless of what they say, they'll vote to approve it or recommend not to approve it. The next meeting would be in June, and there will be a brand new mayor, and there will be 3 new council members. So make of that what you will.
Uh-oh. They might have shot themselves in the foot by not doing this on the timeline they said they were going to.
Yeah, I thought
The
you might
big
have
deal
some
is with
comments
the
on
current
that.
city council and mayor, not with the future.
Exactly. Yeah, so it'll be really interesting to watch, is what I'm trying to say. So the application has been submitted May 8th. It goes to the planning and zoning, and they will either vote to approve, meaning we think this should happen, or say we don't think this should happen, and then it goes on to the town council. So we'll continue to follow. And again, on the newscast, put this on your calendars. It's going to be Thursday, May 8th. We'll have more details coming out. Okay, I think now we're on to RFM story, aren't we?
Okay, we got to give a warning up front. This is a bad story. It's a criminal
dear.
story. It has to do with sex abuse, child sex abuse, and in the context of a religious setting, a church setting. Okay, so that's your notice. I went to a place called lawsuits.org, your trusted legal resource, to get some of the ideas for this story, because they ended up having it very nicely in a Q&A kind of format that was better than a lot of the news stories that I was seeing. By the way, this story is from almost 2 months ago. It's early February. This is February 13th, 2025, that this is being published, but it happened even earlier than that when this fellow was arrested in, I think it was the 4th of February. And there's a reason that we're covering that at this point instead of 2 months ago. And it has to do, unfortunately, with the schedule that we have to keep, the stories that we have to juggle. And frankly, from my point of view, the problem was that at that time, it was like, there are so many stories of this type that it runs the risk of getting the other stories confused with this. And everybody walks away with the idea, yeah, we understand there's a lot of this going on, but we don't really remember what the specifics might be. This, however, is an unusual story, which we're covering now. It has to do with Mark Linhoff Stevens. And the title here at lawsuits.org was former Utah church leader. That's going to be a bishop, by the way. Charged with first-degree felony after teen reports decades-old assault. So that means that she was a teen at the time, not now. It's about 20 years ago, these allegations. So this is the in brief, all right? Mark Linhoff Stevens, age 68. So this would have been back when he was 48 or 49. Faces multiple felony charges for allegedly sexually assaulting a 16-year-old girl while serving as a bishop for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there's the full name, in West Jordan, Utah. The Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office filed charges including forcible sodomy and 2 counts of forcible sexual abuse for incidents that allegedly occurred between 2006 and 2007. The case emerged after the victim reported historical abuse that took place during private meetings in Stevens' church office. The Washington, Utah resident now confronts serious criminal allegations that have drawn attention to church safety protocols and victim protection measures. And one does wonder, how many times are attention going to be drawn to the church's safety protocols and victim protection measures, and not a damn thing is done about them? Here is a picture. I don't know that this is the picture, but that is a West Jordan, Utah LDS church, such as the one in which this was alleged to have happened. Now, this is an unusual case factually, which is why I wanted to go back and revisit it. Even though we didn't cover it 2 months ago, it's in early stages and not much has really happened since this original arrest. His next hearings, I think, is for July. And we'll follow this to see what happens. But here's why I think this is unusual. I've got to say up front, okay, because this is factually unusual, I don't want to make anybody think that this kind of, I don't know, sexual abuse is more damaging than a different kind of sexual abuse. I'm just talking about from a factual observation of it. Wouldn't want anybody to get that impression, because that's not what I'm saying. But this is unusual in that, number one, it's not a bishop who is covering for a predator in his ward after calling the helpline. We hear about that with some frequency. 2, it's not a guy who used to be a bishop, but is being charged for stuff he has done since then, right? Or before then, perhaps. 3, he's not a guy charged during the time period he was a bishop, but for child sexual abuse he committed in a non-church setting, like with a relative on a family reunion. It has nothing to do with his being a bishop or in the church. But this is unusual in that it is one of the rarer cases where this allegation involves a bishop being charged when he was a bishop, alleging child sexual abuse conducted in a church setting while he's fulfilling the role of being a bishop. And all that's significant, especially for liability concerns and how the church is definitely liable for his actions that he does when in that setting and with that calling. All right. Now, when I say this was a bishop, I don't mean he's a bishop now, but I think you understand what I mean. Just anybody have any questions or comments about that before I go on? Nope. Okay.
No, I think you made it clear.
I have peppered my presentation with portraits of bishops interviewing young women. These are pictures that are taken and put up by the church and accessible on the internet. How did the alleged abuse occur in church settings? Court documents detail a pattern of escalating inappropriate behavior that began with what appeared to be routine church leadership meetings. Stevens allegedly initiated these private meetings, that's the bishop, with the 16-year-old victim. So leadership, is she like a Laurel's president or something? I don't know. With a 16-year-old victim between 2006 and 2007, using his position as bishop to request weekly one-on-one sessions under the guise of discussing her leadership responsibilities within the church. The meetings took place in Stevens' church office, in the bishop's office, where he held significant authority as a religious leader. Everybody who's been a Mormon knows the authority that the bishop has. He is the father of the ward. According to prosecutors, Stevens systematically shifted these conversations from church matters to increasingly personal and sexual topics. Charging documents reveal that he questioned the teenager about her personal sexual behavior and experiences. Now, by the way, that would be standard in interviews of this type. In what investigators describe as grooming behavior, Bishop Stevens allegedly told the victim she would bear divine responsibility for her future husband's potential struggles with pornography or other sins. This religious manipulation, prosecutors say, created a context of spiritual obligation and shame. Rebecca, what are you thinking?
Well, first of all, that picture that you showed is very triggering because that girl looks like kind of me. I had that hair. Yeah, that literally. Yeah. And I found myself in that kind of a situation more than once, and several of them were not great, as I've talked about before. So just the fact that this continues to happen, just the fact that this was me 40 years ago, over 40 years ago, and it still happens, and young women and young men still find themselves in these scenarios. It's just incredible to me, decade after decade after decade.
Was there anything, I saw you biting the inside of your lip and shaking your head on the second to last sentence, and I was wondering if there was something in there that had struck you.
Was that the one about you're responsible for your husband?
Yep.
Yeah, no, that definitely is a tactic that they would use on girls. You have to be prepared to police your future husband. You have to be, have incredible virtue for your future husband, but he may have some trouble, and you're the one that's going to be responsible for that, whatever that means. So, they turn young women into the police, for these poor young men too. So it's a lose-lose situation. And I've seen some people saying in the comments, why would you even want to be a bishop in that scenario? And I have friends who are bishops who, good guys, right? And it can get crazy. Like, people can claim things, people can say things. I have a brother-in-law who, when he was a bishop, refused to have the door shut.
I'm sorry, Rebecca, I apologize. What your friend is saying is that who would want to be a bishop in that situation, because the man is unprotected from allegations of what goes on behind his closed door?
Yep, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. I have a brother-in-law who, when he was a bishop, refused to shut the door. And this was years and years ago, before these issues even came up. He said, I will not be alone in a room. I just won't. There's too much liability there. It's a lose-lose for everyone in these scenarios.
And yet, for some reason, in 2025, the church still wants the standard to be the bishop meeting with a kid all by themselves behind closed doors.
I don't know. I'm not even going to say that. That was too cynical for even me to say.
What? Put it
Oh,
in
that
the
reminds
chat.
me of that place in that apology where Jared Halverson was like struggling to come up with something and then decided he would think about it more before he expressed it. I think that had to do with what a big fan he is of Radio Free Mormon. I think that was the part he was having trouble putting into words and thought, nah, I better not say it. Going on. Oh, here's another one. Continuing of how did the alleged abuse occur? Okay, if you haven't left the room and you think you might need to, you should go now. The situation allegedly culminated in physical assault when Bishop Stevens walked around his desk and sexually assaulted the teenager. The specific details of the assault led to the current charges of forcible sodomy and forcible sexual abuse, reflecting the severity of the alleged crimes. Prosecutors note that Stevens' position of religious authority created a significant power imbalance that made it difficult for the teenage victim to resist or report the abuse at the time. Any thoughts about that before I go on? I hope we can all understand by putting ourselves in the position of the teenager how it is that you would feel powerless to report this on your bishop. Yeah.
I will say something from again, I'm a convert, but for those who are born in the covenant, from the time you're born, right? At such a young age, what age do you go into nursery? Is it 18 months old, 3 years old, something like that?
18 months to 3 years, I think.
And you go into nursery and not only does every lesson, every Sunday say, follow the prophet, priesthood talks to God, these men have authority, but then your parents and your siblings and maybe even your extended family, they're also reiterating the same messaging that's been burned into them too. And you grow up, you don't know how to make sense of the world. The only way you know how to make sense of the world is the lens that you were given. You were given Mormonism. You were given priesthood and authorities and prophets and bishops. It is such an uphill battle to get out of that way of seeing things that you can't argue. Again, I understand that believers and apologists and defenders have a certain lens where they will go like, no, this is God's kingdom, so it's all okay. From the outside, this looks gross. And until Mormonism fixes it, they will continue to run into time and time again of sexual abuse cases where they could have done better.
Well, I will say to Bill's point, especially young women are raised to believe it might have been something that you did. If something inappropriate happens, you turn it back on yourself and you say, did I do something? Was I wearing something? Did I say something? I better not say anything. It's just internalized that there might have been something. I mean, I think when I was growing up, it was pre-walking pornography, but that concept is always there. There might have been something that you did. So if you try to report that, you understand inherently that you yourself will be grilled as far as what did you do? What part did you play in this? So that's why you don't report. You don't say anything.
I'll say one more thing, which is maybe women who many of them are also mothers of children in the church. Maybe a lot of you are leaving because the church is still a patriarchy and isn't dealing with women in any way that's responsible to them. But I have to bet that at least some of the women are leaving because they're mothers and they don't want to put their kids in the spaces where in a church that seems to constantly have to deal with sexual abuse cases and not really seem to do anything to diminish them.
All right, I'll continue with the story. What actions have law enforcement taken in response? The West Jordan Police Department launched a comprehensive investigation after the victim came forward with her account of historical abuse. Investigators gathered evidence spanning nearly 2 decades, working to corroborate details of events between 2006 and 2007. This investigation culminated in the Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office filing 3 separate felony charges against former Bishop Stevens. Salt Lake County District Attorney Sam Gill emphasized the particular betrayal of trust inherent in religious setting abuse cases. He said, churches are sacred spaces in our community. Children need to be protected, and it is incumbent on all of us to safeguard these spaces for our children. Gill stated in a formal announcement of the charges, the district attorney's office has established a specific protocol for handling historical abuse cases. And these are, of course, our reports from a long time ago, like 20 years ago, historical. Recognizing the unique challenges these cases present for both investigation and prosecution. And by the way, for defense, just throwing it in there. What actions have law enforcement taken in response? This completes that section. Gill specifically praised the courage of the victim in this case, stating, I want to thank this brave victim survivor for coming forward and reporting this alleged abuse. The district attorney's office has also issued a broader call to action, encouraging other potential victims of sexual assault to report their experiences to law enforcement, indicating possible concerns about additional victims in religious settings, i.e., is this the only person he did it to? Because odds are probably not. Here's another picture. And finally, how has the church responded to these allegations? Now, remember, this is in Lawsuits R Us or lawsuits.org. So they don't know the church like we know the church, but they're reporting the news. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints maintains an official zero-tolerance stance on abuse, stating through their website that abuse cannot be tolerated in any form and that those who abuse will be accountable before God, but certainly not before the church. This case has prompted renewed scrutiny of the church's policies regarding one-on-one meetings between religious leaders and minors, as well as their protocols for handling abuse allegations. You know, eventually they're going to have to crack, and maybe they already are. I'm hearing reports of that over there in England. Another picture. There's a million of them. Just Google it. This happens every Sunday and on weeknights too. Middle-aged men meeting with teenage girls to talk with them about their sex lives. True story. And finally, here in this article, the charges against former Bishop Stevens highlight ongoing concerns about accountability within religious institutions, particularly regarding historical abuse cases. The case raises questions about the supervision of church leaders and the safeguards in place to protect young members of the congregation. Well, yeah, it continues to raise questions. No solutions, just questions, and more abused kids. While the church's official position condemns abuse, this case has sparked discussions about practical prevention measures and reporting mechanisms within religious organizations, which the church will do only when they're dragged kicking and screaming and forced to do it. And then they'll say it was their idea all along. So that is the end of that. But there is this report, which was on Floodlit. And there's where I got the picture from. Mark Linhoff Stevens was a Mormon bishop in Utah in 2006. There are a couple of extra details here as well. Charged in 2025 with sexual assault of a 16-year-old girl that allegedly took place in his office at church. And then it says, Mark Stevens was a Mormon bishop in 2006 in the Cobble Creek 3rd Ward in West Jordan, Utah. So if you were in West Jordan, Utah, and you know this fellow, or you were a member of his ward, you might want to talk to some people, talk to some kids. I don't know. I have no idea. But yeah, I think that you might want to investigate if you or anyone you love might have been around this individual during this time period or any time. Cobble Creek Stake. He began his position as bishop in 2004, 2005. And Stevens was a missionary in San Diego, California from 75 to 77 and got married the following year in 78 in the Ogden, Utah LDS Temple. He attended Weber State College when Joseph Bishop was its president. There's a blast from the past. Probably just a coincidence. And then there was this piece from the newscast, which talks a little bit about it as well. And then that's the end of my reporting on this story.
ABC4 News at 5 o'clock. I'm Sarah Murphy. Brian McElhatton has the night off. We're glad you're here with us on this Monday evening. A former bishop of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was in court today, accused of sexually abusing a teenager. ABC4's Jonathan May is following his legal process and talking with an abuse survivor to see how a case like this may affect the community. Jonathan, what have you learned today?
Yeah, that's right. 68-year-old Mark Stevens stood before a judge today. He's accused of using his leadership to ask a teenager to meet with him back in 2006. Now, the Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office says Stephen allegedly told the girl she needs to know how to please her future husband or that she would be held accountable by God. One woman abused by a Catholic priest when she was a kid, who's now helping survivors, weighs in on the case. She leads Utah for the survivor networks of those abused by priests. They say they support women and men wounded by priests, ministers, bishops, deacons, nuns, coaches, and teachers.
Especially in a situation where it's a person that claims to represent God who is doing the crimes. It's kind of soul murder, because it's like, why does God want this to happen to me?
Process is just starting, with today's focus on scheduling. A preliminary hearing has been scheduled for July 16th. Reporting live in Salt Lake City, Jonathan May, ABC4 News.
Jonathan, thank you.
And there it is. So if there's any thoughts that you have, I mean, this is, when is it going to end? It's something that is actually, I have had to weigh. Every time we talk about this kind of thing, I do go back, I do review the live chat afterward, and it is difficult on people to have to hear this kind of thing. And I know it's not compared to going through it, but still, and to continue and continue and continue. And then there are certain cases that we want to follow and update, so we'll revisit. But this one, it's just, this guy, the allegations are that when he was a bishop, he used his bishop interview privilege in order to apparently, allegedly, teach this 16-year-old girl how to pleasure her husband, her future husband, and that she would be condemned eternally if she did not do so.
That's like an angel and a flaming sword right there. That's kind of the modern day version. And I have to say that, we look at the news every week as we prepare for the newscast, and there is always something about this topic. And then we have like a chat that we're all, comparing notes and talking, and we'll throw those stories on there. And it's always like, RFM, you want to cover this because it's legal, but it's over and over. And sometimes you've said, enough. We could cover this nonstop. This could be the topic of the newscast every week. And so we try to balance it, but it's so important to show it, because I'm looking at the chat here and people are saying, when will it end? I actually feel it will end when parents stand up in a very vocal way. I've told the story before of my 15-year-old son, over a decade ago, who had a panic attack. I came across him on Sunday afternoon at home. A bishop had asked him, invasive sexual questions, and he just, was breaking down. And I made that decision right there. And I said, you don't ever have to go back. You don't ever have to have another interview. You don't even have to attend anymore if you don't want to. He was crying as a 15-year-old boy because, he had anxiety, but these interviews with this particularly aggressive bishop were just soul crushing to him. So I, as a parent, said, you're not doing it. You're not doing it anymore. So I really feel, if parents could just see, and if parents could look at Floodlit, right? We need to draw attention to Floodlit. I know that they work so hard. I know they need help. I'm not sure exactly in what ways we can help. I would suggest everybody go over to their website. I'm seeing it being posted in the comments. They are the ones that put the writing on the wall. They show what's there. And if parents could only be made aware, I want to think that the parents might stand up finally and say, enough. I don't know if you think that's possible.
The only thing
the church churns out. The church churns out a never-ending stream of people who will have faith in other Mormons, and especially in their male leadership, to not abuse them or take advantage of them or lie to them.
Yeah. The church that I used to love can do better. And it really wouldn't be that difficult. The three of us could sit in a room for 20 minutes and come up with 4 or 5 easy things to do. The church has $293 billion. It can pay for some background checks. That's not going to be a problem. Its ministry is unpaid, except for the top guys, of course. But its lay ministry is unpaid. It's got money. It takes in hundreds of thousands of dollars in a ward, and then it gives the ward a budget of whatever it is, $12,000 or something. Having 2 people in the room at all times. And again, I get it. Maybe we leave room for the kid to come to the bishop because maybe it's a problem at home.
Right.
Maybe he can't afford to have somebody. So maybe the kid gets to ask the bishop, can we please sit down? And then it can be one-on-one. Maybe. But every time a leader asks a person to come into an office to have a conversation, there are 2 adults in that room. Easy. Really easy. And for whatever reason, this church doesn't want to do the easy things that would keep people from being traumatized for the rest of their life.
Yeah, because we all maintain those stories. We have those stories and we remember them. You don't get to forget things that happen to you like that.
Yeah. And somebody said here, a background check does not find all sexual assault perpetrators.
Yeah.
Sure, but it at least finds 1. It at least finds 3. It at least finds a few dozen.
And let me tell you something. I don't care what your freedom of religion tells you, okay? If you're a church and you've got a member that you put in a position of leadership over children who does have a sexual abuse conviction in their background, and you don't do a background check, and they offend on one of those children that you've put them over, okay? Yeah, your freedom of religion is not going to be a defense to getting your ass sued for not doing a background check on that person. That's what I believe. That's my view of it.
Yeah, it's important.
But why not? In other words, it would be an effort in risk management for the church to do it.
That's right.
You represent Christ. For Christ's sake, he would do it.
There it is. I was actually surprised in the news story, the clip you played, that they said Mormon bishop. Often they will say volunteer in the church, distance themselves from any kind of actual responsibility, but they flat out said Mormon bishop. So anyway, thank you for the story, RFM. Again, we'll continue to cover this kind of stuff. And like I said, we're always, these exist every week. We could cover this nonstop on the newscast. And please go to Floodlit. Please go to their website. Please see how you can help, because I know they're doing this incredible work and they need help in all kinds of different ways. So, all right, I think I have the last 2 very quick stories, which are kind of interesting, a different tone here. The latest General Handbook update is out. They once said, it was a couple years ago, that the actual, what the church is, what you need to listen to are the scriptures, the words of the living prophets, and the handbook. And I think that's true. That's really what the gospel is. If you want to know what it is, that's it. So reading the handbook is revelatory. The latest general handbook updates include an AI-powered search assistant. Now, I kind of covered, I think maybe somewhere else, the beta version of this, but here it is. It's out for everybody to try. So as directed by the First Presidency and Quorum of the 12 Apostles, the General Handbook Serving in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints continues to be updated as needed. Little tiny tweaks here and there. Along with the most recent content updates, there's a new search assistant feature that's been added to the General Handbook on the Gospel Library app version 7.2 and on churchofjesuschrist.org to help church leaders. I think that's kind of key, and members find answers to their questions. The search assistant can analyze users' questions and summarize potentially relevant information found in the handbook. Because the assistant is powered by artificial intelligence, in parentheses AI, Users should verify responses using the links provided by the assistant. So basically, instead of having to go through that handbook, which, oh my gosh, how many sections and subsections of subsections does it have? You can simply use this new AI-powered chat help to ask a question. Can I be sealed to my second husband if I've been divorced from my first wife? Second, those kind of questions. The AI is going to go out and it's going to find the answer. It's going to give you a summary of the answer, and then it's supposed to put the relevant section. And the caveat here is just don't listen to the AI, but make sure you go and check the section. Well, who's going to do that? The reason that you're using the AI is because you don't want to go in there and check the section. So I think it's very interesting that leaders will be using this. Now, we've done
Well,
an
it's like
episode.
in the introduction of every single Cliff Notes brochure, which is reading the Cliff Notes brochure is no substitute for reading the actual book.
Yeah, that's exactly
I know
it.
because I read so many of those Cliff Notes without reading the actual book.
I passed so many AP courses only on Cliff's Notes. I can't even tell you. But yeah, so we did an episode on Mormonish a little while ago about AI and how it's not what you think it is. And when it mixes with religion, things can get really interesting. And our friend Troy, who really knows what he's talking about, he says, I asked his opinion of this new, chat AI help with the handbook. And he said, things could get weird if users of the AI start thinking of it as being more accurate or truthful than they do the leadership. And this can happen. There it is, an instant answer. You might use that in a talk. You might use that anywhere. AI hallucinates. I hope you guys all understand this because it is trying its very best to give the user what it wants. When you ask it a question, it starts hallucinating the answer. Very layman's terms, it starts going out and seeking what it thinks you want to hear. But it has no way of actually knowing if its answers are truthful. It has to rely on outside confirmation or consensus for that, if that makes sense. So the problem is the accuracy of the information that you're going to be getting. And even over on some faithful social media.
I don't really care about the accuracy as long as it's telling me what I want to hear.
Well, and that is true. This is what I'm saying. But when it comes to questions of religion or the rules or points of order in the church, this could get very interesting. And even on faithful social media, people have been raising this question because a lot of people use this to write talks, even though we've been warned against this lazy learner, right, by Elder Bednar. They're using it to provide outlines for talks. I've even seen quotes kind of fabricated from general authorities. They sound right. They sound really close, but when you look them up, they're not correct. So even here on faithful social media, somebody asked the question, is it right to answer scriptures related questions with AI? What would you do if you see someone in the church asking ChatGPT or Gemini questions to answer questions asked during discussions, maybe an institute class, elders quorum, other classes entirely? Personally, I think it contradicts the primary purpose of AI, faith in Christ. And for a spiritual growth, it's unacceptable. This is just me speaking my mind. So they asked the question, and other people kind of brought this up. They said, again, LLMs, large language models, hallucinate a ton. One should not rely on them for answers to anything, especially having to do with religion. Exactly. LLMs are language models. They're trained to generate text. They're not necessarily trained to check for text's accuracy or logic. So everybody kind of sees the problem with this. It reminds me of those AI pastors that we've reported on in the newscast where they start kind of going rogue and thinking they're ordained. And I don't know, it's only going to get interesting. Were you going to say something, RFM?
Well, AI, I don't know. I just think that this is all a huge mistake.
Yeah.
And that this is, the prophets, the science fiction authors for the last 180 years, I'll say 80 years, 75 years, try not to be contradicted on this, have been telling us this is going to happen.
Yep.
They've been warning us.
They have been warning us, and yet now they're using it. They've let the Trojan horse in. Let's just say that. So
it's like, this is a good idea. Have they not seen 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Apparently not, or they didn't take it seriously, I think. So another interesting update to the handbook, and I'm going to have one of you guys read this because I lost my notes on it, and my slides are like this big. What happens to somebody who misuses personal data? This is in the handbook. Look how interesting this is. RFM, do you want to read this, or Bill, whoever can see it better?
Well, it's hard for me to say if I can see it better than Bill, but I'm happy to read it.
Please do.
Misuse of personal data includes deliberately entering false information in church records
Yeah.
or intentionally using or sharing personal data for non-church purposes. Oh, who among us hasn't done that from time to time? If a person if a person with access to church systems has misused personal data, promptly notify the Data Privacy Office at churchofjesuschrist.org. In serious cases, when you have misused personal data publicly, in serious cases, the stake president may counsel with the area presidency. Holy crap.
Yeah.
About whether a membership council or other action is necessary. Leaders consider the action taken with the personal data, whether the misuse of personal data was a one-time event or a repetition, whether rectifying steps have been taken, and the person's level of remorse. Always pretend you're sorry. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. The position held by the member, with the idea apparently that the higher you are, the harder you fall. In some cases, the first presidency may direct that the membership record of a person who has misused personal data be annotated. Whoa, you're getting the scarlet letter A for annotated. This would prevent him or her from holding callings with privileged access to personal data. So we've got a new annotation. It's always a happy and exciting day in the church.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be stamped by AI, but I just thought this was extremely aggressive. I mean, there are other things people can do in the handbook that don't have this kind of aggressive approach. And it made me think of what we covered on the newscast a while ago, where somebody had gotten the ward list or the stake list and sent out a letter. Do you remember this? This happens every once in a while about truth claims and things like that. So I wonder if that's what they're talking about. But this is right there in the handbook. They are going to crack down. If you think that you're going to send out a wedding announcement, you know, I know people that have used it for this from the ward list, you might get annotated. Any thoughts on that?
Is there an annotation for financial fraud by the top 15?
Yeah, no. It's just using personal. Well, and that's a good question because Elder Ballard, that's right, did perhaps allegedly look at some of the financial information.
About the SEC and
that too.
Whole fiasco.
Yeah. I don't know what it means or how far it goes, but they're certainly doubling down on misuse of personal information, which is what makes this next thing very interesting to me. So,
Rebecca, can I just comment that that's possible that is being done on the last slide for liability issues, that there's been something that's happened where somebody's accessed not personal, but church stuff, church lists of people, use it in some way that ended up being actionable. Okay. So they want to be on record saying, don't do it, so that, we did what we could, right? We told them you can't do this. If that's the case, and I don't know that it is, but if it is, it's a stark contrast to the effort they will go to not be sued, okay, over this stuff with data, whereas it's open season on kids in the church.
Yeah. There doesn't seem to be any, it's willy-nilly, right? And again, this might put an end or a dent in affinity fraud, right? If you can't contact all your ward members and tell them about your latest MLM, maybe that's not going to go so well. But what I thought was really interesting, another part of it, this is all about data, accomplishing your divinely appointed responsibilities with the Member Tool app. So here is how you can access some of the data and what it is okay to use it for. I thought this was very interesting. So it's divided into 4 principles. I can't remember which apostle stated these, but the purpose of the app helps you fulfill these 4 things that you're trying to do to live a righteous life and live the gospel. So the first thing you can use this Member Tools app for is to find a meeting house. An essential part of living the gospel is attending church where you can gather with your fellow saints. You can use this feature to help you find a meeting house. Okay. So if you wanted to know where somebody attended church and you knew kind of the vicinity where they lived, you could look them up. That's kind of interesting. I can see how that could be problematic in some cases. You can schedule a temple appointment. A simple way to build temple worship into your routine is to schedule the appointment. The My Temple feature quickly redirects you to ordinance schedules that are available. You can make an appointment, find the time slot. Okay, that's good. That seems fine. Number 2 is caring for those in need. Another way that
I'm sorry to interrupt, but this temple appointment thing, is that something that there's a certain time when that changed about making appointments to go to the temple? Because the last time I went to the temple, which has been over 10 years ago, but it's
Just
not
walk in.
that long ago. There were no appointments. You just
No.
showed up and you went and took your position and you were worked through the system and spit out the other end.
No, they have pretty intensive scheduling, and I use it all the time because I like to show people where temples are being built, how many slots are actually available, right? 50, 40, 30, any given hour. And I think what they're trying to do is kind of get an idea of how to sort of plan the sessions, because I know temples sometimes close on certain days. There isn't that much of a need. So I don't know, but you can walk in, but you can also set an appointment, either one. Yep.
Thank you.
Kind of interesting, but you can check out how many things are available, and that paints a really interesting picture. Okay. Number 2, caring for those in need. How can you use this data? Your ministering assignment, right? Ministering can be as simple as a thoughtful text or a call, yet it can make a lasting impact. The ministering assignment features allows you to quickly find people you're assigned to minister to and access their contact details. So you can look anyone up. For example, I'm still a member of record, and I have been ministered to many times. Having not attended church, the only thing I can think is that they have used this to look me up. I've gotten birthday texts. I've gotten presents left on my porch, all those kinds of things. So thank you to those sisters who brought me caramelled apples.
What was the best present you had left on your porch, Rebecca?
Caramelled apples.
Wow, that's good.
I love caramelled apples. I would rather have that than birthday cake. Yeah. So there you go. All right. Anyway, again, questionable, not questionable. I don't know. If it's somebody that hasn't attended church for a long time like me, yet I'm getting texts and I'm getting calls because I'm still on, the rolls. I don't know what you think of that. The temple prayer roll, whether or not you are endowed in the temple, if someone is struggling with sickness, any other type of affliction, you can add their name to the temple prayer roll anytime. So you can go into this app and you can put anybody's name there. I could put your name there, RFM.
You could?
I could.
Would you put it down as a radio-free Mormon?
I would. I could. In fact, maybe I'll do it right now if I knew how to get into the dang app.
Well, how would God know who I really am, though?
God knows all, RFM. You've got to understand that.
He keeps giving me evidence that he doesn't really.
Bill's just shaking his head. He's like, oh my God.
It's not prophets who can't see around corners. God can't see around corners.
God can't see around corners. That's it. Okay. So it gets even better. This is so interesting. Number 3, inviting all to receive the gospel. Okay. This is another way to live a righteous life, to live the gospel. And how can this tool help you? Well, first of all, you can introduce friends to the missionaries. When a friend is interested in meeting the missionaries, you can easily help them connect with elders or sisters in the area using the Introduce Friends to Missionaries feature. So you just jump on the app, you get their information, you plug it in, and within, I would say, probably 2 to 3 minutes, there's a missionary right there standing in front of you because they are just living on this app. So that's helpful. Another thing is you can make a group. Teachers and leaders can easily communicate together, and you can put everybody together. Then you can send out mass texts or, mass information or emails. That's helpful if you're trying to put something together. This next one I think is interesting. The directory. Of course, member tools will always be your first stop to finding your directory and reaching out to others. One of the creative ways I have used the member tools directory, said Edwin Sanchez, a bishop in Alta Vista Ward in Puerto Cumumbaro, Venezuela, has been to go through name by name and try to contact members I don't know. Why don't you know them? Because they haven't been coming to church, who were baptized as children or young people and no longer attend church activities. So there you are going in, somebody who maybe was baptized when they're 8, they're an adult now, and suddenly, ding, they receive a text from this lovely bishop asking them if, they're still interested, if they'd like to come back to church. So I find that very interesting, that you can just go in there and find anybody as long as they're on record. They probably don't even realize they're on record, and try to contact them.
And ding, it's Edwin again.
Yep. And there it is. That's right. Yeah. No, I know people that are sent on missions to do that, to find people. And of course, if you try to find people and you can't find them, you let the ward know, and the ward sends those records back to Salt Lake. And we've talked about this before. And that, of course, kind of changes the ratio of attendance in a ward, right? If you can say there are 400 people here we've never seen, those records are gone, poof, then suddenly your attendance is at 70%. So I've said it before, I'd like to see that file in Salt Lake because I think that's where the true the true numbers lie, if we can say. All right. Last one, Uniting Families for Eternity, Ordinance Ready. This is a way that you can go in and figure out from Family Search, who instantly is ready to take through the temple. Of course, that's a whole nother podcast right there. How many names are repeats and how many names are mistakes, but you can go in there and say that. And then the final one I thought was great, the Covenant Path Progress. Have you heard of this before, that you can actually chart your progress on the Covenant Path? Uh-oh, he's so overwhelmed, he's muted.
No, I haven't. But that whole story about how when you've left the church, you become inactive and they're trying to find you and you're trying not to be found.
Yeah.
It's like the Mormon version of the most dangerous game.
Ooh, it is kind of. Yeah. But of course, they're doing it for good purposes. Anyway, if you are a new member or someone returning to full activity in the church, the Covenant Path Progress feature provides experience to help strengthen your faith in Jesus Christ. And I couldn't find a graphic, so I found this chutes and ladders, because I figure it's kind of like that, right? Didn't y'all play that? You're going up the ladder, you mess up, you're down the chute. That's kind of how I picture the Covenant Path.
It is. It is. The best thing that can happen to you is to get the Queen Faustine card.
Yeah, I loved Queen Faustine. That's
It's
right.
a mixed metaphor, I know.
I used to play with my little sister, and I would stack the deck. I would put the root beer float right there, like third card in. So we'd go, you, me, you, and oh God, I'm sorry, I won. Yeah, I was that kind of big sister.
I don't know how this keeps happening.
Yeah, I don't know why. I always
Just lucky, I guess.
Give me a quarter. We always played for money. I made her. So anyway, Bill, any final thoughts on data? And then we'll very quickly go to wrap it up with garments.
I only wonder if the day is not far from now when it will be easy to verify somebody and they can have their name removed or resign from the church with just a click of the button.
Yeah, that is missing from that tool, isn't it?
Makes you wonder if that one probably will never come around.
Nope, not as long as you have to be notarized. It's not going to happen. But it seems like that would fit there with everything
It's
else.
like these spam emails that I get. There's some of them, you go down to the bottom, it says unsubscribe, you're done, no fuss, right?
Mhm.
Then you get these others that don't even have it on there. I think
Yeah.
they're supposed to, where they have this huge wall of text with like a million different little things and tiny little print, and you can't find it. And it's like, I would rather just, delete it when it comes in rather than try and find where this is. And then sometimes it'll take you to a funky page and your malware is, going off with the sirens. Anyway, yeah, that's their version of not wanting you to unsubscribe. Therefore, we're going to make it as difficult for you as humanly possible.
Yep, I think there's truth to that. I literally have about 12,000 emails in one of my emails because of that. I just would rather delete if I get around to it instead of trying to find that unsubscribe button. So I do understand that. Anyway,
I've
check out
unsubscribed
that
from
app.
basically everything I can unsubscribe from.
I think you can actually get tools to help you unsubscribe. So anyway, check out the tool, everybody, and see what you think of it. Okay. And also I wanted to bring up, there is something called LDS Bot, and that is a sort of a faithful chat bot, right? It's been fed with faithful information, and you can go in there and ask it gospel questions, and that's run by the B.H. Roberts Foundation. So that's kind of interesting. If you haven't heard of that before, you might want to go check that out. It's kind of fun.
This is like an apologetic AI.
Yes, it is. It is. But people like to try to trip it up. People like to try to make it explode, kind of like on Star Trek where they make the robots outthink themselves
Nomad.
and explode. Like Nomad, exactly. I wasn't going to be as geeky as to say the name, but yes, like Nomad. All right. Final story here really quick. We could not let this go without talking about what everybody's talking about. And I've called this, can somebody please tell us about the new garments? Well, about 500 LDS influencers can tell you about the new garments. These are just a few pictures from the many, many reels and Instagram and Facebook and TikToks that are out there. We have them telling us, well, they don't exactly work with most tank tops. You're going to have to wear a tank top over the garment. We have someone showing where the slip comes to.
So you're going to have to wear 3 tank tops. You're going to have to wear the garment, a tank top over that to cover it, and then the tank top you want to wear on top?
Yes, in some scenarios. It's very straight, if that makes sense. Like I could not wear this shirt with it. It comes straight down there, right?
It's a broad strap.
Yeah, most summer shirts, sleeveless shirts are a little bit, racer back a little bit. You can see the one in the middle there. She's showing a racer back shirt. You can see the garment underneath there. So the answer of one of the influencers is to wear the garment wear a bra, then wear a tank top to cover that little, maybe 1/4 of an inch that's going to show, and then wear your summer shirt. Which I'm not sure I understand that, because men can wear garments where, the neckline kind of shows as a crew. But anyway, they are talking about nothing but garments. And it's interesting because people are wondering, where did you get all these garments? They're not available yet. And what a lot of these influencers are saying, oh, I have a friend on a mission. I have an aunt on, who lives in, somewhere where they have them. So they're finding ways to get them and to show us what they're all about. Even the men's garment top, right, which is a tank top. And this influencer said she had to modify her husband's shirt, as you can see, because again, it's got this straight, it's not a regular tank top. It's like maybe something you'd buy in New Jersey. No offense to any of our New Jersey listeners or viewers, but the husband said, yeah, it's comfortable. I don't think I'll wear it that much, but it's great that it's an option, right?
This is like the t-shirts from the 80s.
That's what I was going to say. A gold chain kind of from the 80s. Yeah.
All it needs is some leg warmers.
Yep. Maybe those are coming back. I love leg warmers. Those are amazing. In the Salt Lake Trib, Peggy covered it. What LDS women are saying about the new sleeveless garments. Yes, you will be able to wear tank tops. And I guess that would be a tank top over your garment to cover. I don't know. I do not know.
As long as you have the straps of the tank top being outrageously wide.
Yes. Yep, that's the thing. And I don't know, because I've seen pictures of them different ways. So, but what's interesting are the comments. Of course, I kind of divided up by the demographic of age. The younger women are thrilled. They're very excited. There's a whole new world of wardrobe options for the rest of their life. The older women like myself are like, I've been kind of upset about it, and I didn't think I would be, because modesty is so drummed into you from, I was one of those kids that was dressed garment ready from being a baby, right? I never owned a sundress. I never owned anything that was sleeveless, anything like that. And I've seen comments from older women saying things like that, and also saying, wait a minute, modesty is one of our keystones. Why are we changing this so quickly, just with, no fanfare? It's just changing. I saw one post from a husband who said, my wife is beautiful, and she missed out on her 20s, 30s, and 40s wearing really cute tops that she would look amazing in, Instead, she stayed on the covenant path. So a lot of very strong emotions about the new garments. And
yeah, the covenant path is well known for being somewhat frumpy.
It is. Well, we saw the Chutes and Ladders game. So now what I think is interesting, and I haven't seen anybody bring this up before. So there is a half slip and a slip. And the instructions are that a woman can wear their own underwear of their own choosing underneath this. Okay. So this hasn't really happened before. There have been some instructions on, what a woman can wear over or under that time of the month, but that's very utilitarian. Now they're saying you can wear these slips and you can choose your own underwear. So I predict this is going to unleash just a storm, right? For the first time ever, being able to choose cute underwear. I can't even imagine what this is going to do. I don't even want to imagine what this is going to do. But some influencers have been talking about how excited they are to be able to choose new underwear.
And I'm sure they are. I can't believe it's 2025 and people are excited about being able to choose their underwear.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about all these videos. People who are not LDS are watching these and going, what in the hell is happening? But I'm going to go even further on this. I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to talk about a conspiracy theory.
I know this person.
What?
I know this person.
Yeah, that's right. That's Jasmine. She put out a video saying, I'm getting this question. Why are they only available Q4? Why aren't they widely available? And she puts out all kinds of answers. Oh, they're needed in the hot and humid climates. Well, it's hot and humid pretty much anywhere, a lot of places in the United States. Well, they want to get user feedback from other countries. They want to make them available in the countries where the garments are being manufactured. Anyway, there's no real answer. So here's my conspiracy theory. And I found somebody online that crystallized it perfectly. This person says, I think that the church, thought they could actually get away with only releasing these garments in certain countries and nobody would notice. Think back to when we reported on this. Think how this might fit in. That's honestly what their initial response looked like when people first discovered the new style existed. And it's true, there was no announcement. They just kind of came across it, right, on the garment website.
Mm.
For some members only in some areas, users in the US could not even see them in the online catalog as an option at all. So people came across them in the countries where they were going to be rolled out, but they weren't anywhere else. Initial inquiries met with the church's refusal to even talk about it. Think back to when we podcasted about this. It didn't look at all like a prepared, planned church-wide rollout. It looked like the church didn't plan on making them available to U.S. members at all. The church's initial response had all the markings of a panic response. Church spokesman Doug Anderson would not confirm any details about what exactly the new garments would look like, nor when they would be widely available. And there's a website, we can link to an article where they said this. The article was later reworded slightly, but that was the original wording. Then later on that very same day, after being asked for comment, the church's website suddenly changed to include the sleeveless option for members in Utah with the label available fourth quarter 2025. So what if it was never intended for everyone? What if it was intended to meet the needs of and customs of certain places where the church is growing? And now...
That's why it's only over there in Africa.
Yep. But
That's
everybody's...
why, because, I mean, that's in Africa. Who knows what goes on in Africa? This
Well,
is the mistake that the church consistently makes. They are never going to not fall for that, which is they think they can actually get away with doing something over here, and nobody over there is going to ever find out about it. When over and over we do.
And we do. And we've talked before about seeming different modesty standards or the way that they're presented in different cultures and customs and places. And I don't know if this plays into it at all, but just the fact that this is such a major change. And the fact that you can buy new underwear, you now can wear things you've never been able to wear in your entire life. You know, this is not to be treated lightly, and people aren't treating it lightly. And that's why I think, I don't know, that's my conspiracy theory, is that they never really intended that it would really be for people in the United States. And yet here it is. And so we'll be curiously watching conference to see if anything is said about that.
And now they've got all these Utah female Mormon influencers modeling it and broadcasting it everywhere.
Yep. No, there's no way to take it back. They're going to have to say it was always the plan. But I like the way this person said panic response, because that is kind of what it was. Garments? What garments? Where? Oh, those. Oh, never mind. Wait, what? Oh, here they are. So I don't know. I'd be curious in the comments if anybody noticed anything like that. And I will say that still, if you look at all the curriculum, the articles, for the strength of youth, I don't know if teenagers can even wear, sleeveless shirts. They're going to have to address all of this. But I found this, I thought it was really funny, that I'll end on. It's a modesty test for the head, shoulders, knees, and toes primary song. So I know you can't make this stuff up. So what you're supposed to do is
wait, this is legitimate stuff. This is real church.
Yeah,
stuff?
this is on the church's website.
Okay.
Yeah. So head, you're supposed to touch your head, and if your shirt goes up and shows your midriff, that's not modest. You need to go change. Shoulders, if you reach and touch your shoulders and you touch skin, that is not modest, and you need to go home and change. Okay. Knees, if you bend down and touch your knees, you're supposed to look at your neckline, and if it's not appropriate, if it's too low, too much is showing, you need to go change. And then toes, you're supposed to be aware of, as they said, your backside. If the fabric is, riding up and you can see your back, that's not modest. So head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Everybody try that before you go out. Yeah.
Or maybe you could just not touch your knees or toes when you're out and about.
Maybe not. But the rest of the song is eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. So I don't know. I'm watching The Handmaid's Tale right now. I won't even make a comment. All right. Any comments on garments, Bill? And then I think
that part about
done.
the shoulders. That part about the shoulders has to be redone now, because you can be temple worthy, be wearing temple worthy clothing that is covering your temple garments, and still touch shoulders, touch skin when you touch your shoulders, right?
This part of your shoulder. Yeah. And are there going to be temple dresses that are sleeveless? I mean, this is a bigger picture than I think a lot of us are even thinking about. So what do you think, Bill? Or do you just not want to think about it?
No. I'll just say the Renlund quote from last week.
Yes.
Garment story, the mass amount of women speaking up against the Halvorsen video, women leaving the church in big numbers, to the point where for the first time ever, we've got more men in the church than women. What I see the underlying in all of that is that the church is losing the control it used to have. And it's losing some of that control unwillingly, and it's losing some of that control having to cave in trying to maintain some of it. And I think from, screaming and kicking, it's going to have to go along. And it's only going to happen more and more because this is the ongoing restoration and we are only in the beginning. This church is getting pushback at every stage and can no longer do the unhealthy things to the degree. Again, still unhealthy by far, but it can't do the unhealthy things to the degree that it used to. And I think for that, that's good news.
Yeah, I think you're right. All right, I think we did it. I think we covered it. I want to remind everybody that this weekend is the 195th LDS General Conference. It's going to be Saturday, April 5th through Sunday, April 6th. And again, who's at the pulpit and who's in the pew? I invite everybody to just kind of take mental note. It's really hard not to. And of course, RFM, do you want to talk about this? This is always what everybody looks forward to conference weekend.
Oh, certainly. It's what I look forward to. Oh my gosh. It's the conference, general conference. No church that cares about the welfare of its members would submit them to general conference. And yet here we are. And here am I, having thrust myself to the forefront of this controversy. I will be reviewing general conference, which I actually think is the 196th annual.
Is it?
You
Was I
start with the
wrong?
first one. What?
Is it? It's not 95, it's 96?
Well, the first one was April of 1830.
Oh,
So the second one was April 31.
okay.
Okay. So anyway, they decided to count it the way they want. It's their conference. They can count it how they want. But it's going to be the 196th conference, I believe. However they're talking about it. Anyway, going to be doing that. The goal is to be in there, to be in the traces, to be watching this stuff, to be taking notes on each and every one of the 5 sessions of General Conference this weekend. And then immediately afterward, after the closing prayer, after the universal amen, I go live and I give you my thoughts and notes about what has just transpired. Not once, not twice, but all 5 times this weekend. That's why I'm looking forward so much to it. I watch General Conference, so you don't have to.
And that's it. Well, I hope you're training. I hope you're hydrating. I hope you have some wristbands. I hope you have a sweatband. I hope you're...
That was at the sweatband and the
grueling.
leg warmers. That's what he needed with a t-shirt.
It's grueling. So
He's
yeah,
John
you watch it.
Travolta in Staying Alive.
That's right. So you watch it so we don't have to. And it's true. And there are others that also have conference wrap-ups. So everybody go check everything out. Very quickly, also on the radar for the rest of us, on Tuesday, we have Mormonish Podcast. We are having the amazing Charlie Harrell, who is going to tell us about Jesus's birthday. Is it on December 25th? I don't think so. We know better than that. That's going to be interesting. What do you guys have coming up quickly for the rest of the week?
Well, on Wednesday, we're going to have Mormonism Live, and we're going to have a fantastic thing when actually, against all expectations, BYU is going to tell Jared Halverson that he can come on the show. And then we're going to have that. For all I know, I've got the text in my phone, and it's happened while I've been on the air. We just don't know about these things. But if not, then what we're going to do is one of the most important academic findings, I think, in Book of Mormon and Mormon studies in the past half century. Easily. Very, very huge. Giving us a huge insight into how it was that Joseph Smith wrote the Book of Mormon. Because guess what? This is the evidence right here. This is a smoking gun. And we'll talk about it. And I've been thinking about it really hard. I've read the paper a number of times. And I think I've got a great way of introducing it in the first half of the podcast. So this is going to be so easy, I hope, to understand and appreciate the significance of this discovery.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And then Mormonism After Dark, Friday or Saturday?
Should be Friday, 8 p.m. I'll just note, by the way, an Almost Awakened episode, I think, will come out early in the day tomorrow. We've started putting those back together again. By the way, there were almost 750 people in our show tonight watching. That's pretty high compared to what we normally get as far as the live viewers. For everybody who's watching, if you would just right now click the like or subscribe button. In fact, do both. Hit the like, hit the up arrow, the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button. whichever station, whichever YouTube channel you're watching it on tonight. And so there is that. But I thought that was incredible to have that many people watching the news show live. So appreciate all of you that tune in. Mormonism After Dark, 8 p.m. Friday. Unless you want to do something different, but that's when we always do it.
Oh, no, absolutely. We're going to do that, and we're going to see what happens. By the way, I do believe that our good friend Jared Halverson may be watching this. So, Jared, if it works for you for Friday evening, that's where we did it before. We could do Friday evening if you want.
We can do a Saturday morning, Jared, if you wanted to have that conversation.
I will forego the cartoons, the Saturday morning cartoons. Even that I would forego.
He stays up late. He stays up late. We've seen his alarm clock.
I'll do 2:22 in the morning. I'll do it.
Wherever the cop's beating up a guy, I'll be there.
That's right. A lot of people would tune in to see that for sure. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for everyone for tuning in.
I want to say one thing. Can I say one thing about this? The adding to the stage. If I remove that, then I add this. Yeah. Is this what we're working on for the thumbnail?
Yeah, but somebody said plagiarism is spelled incorrectly.
Yeah. It's an IA, not an E.
I will reach out to our thumbnail creator, by the way. Yeah, we've got somebody who does these now, and they're much better looking than what I was doing in the past. So we're really grateful for that. But I'll reach out and let them know the word spelled.
They're almost as good looking as Adam Clark himself.
The good looking man right there.
He's a good looking man.
Handsome fellow. I bet he was big with the ladies back in the 1800s.
Yeah.
He's a mover and a shaker. All right, everybody. We will see you all next time.
He's Methodist, actually. Sorry.
He's a mover and shaker Methodist. That's right. Next time on the Mormon Newscast. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. for next week's Mormon Newscast.